Mary, do you need your name placard? Okay. I could do it without my own, but, you know.
Testing.
Testing.
I just heard it that time. Did you hear it? Yeah. I don't think they're using it. They're not turning on. Well, I saw the shelter. No, it's Mr.
And then she was. I know a little bit about lots of things. But what they said was,
Rich, can you hear me?
I can see and hear everybody saying everything. It's fantastic.
hey, Rich.
Hey, Sean, I can hear all the stories everybody's telling. If folks are sitting on who's speaking.
But the microphones are off.
No, not this.
I hear it.
Oh, not the.
Everything.
Oh, is that the new piece of technology that's
It
going
is
to
not the but Rich was kind enough to let us borrow his Sonos portable speaker, Bluetooth speaker. So we're going to
Rich
get
Rediker, what a guy.
If Bill Howard is listening, this is what we like, a Sonos.
Your wish list?
Speaker.
That speaker's a lot bigger than
It's
mine.
got the charging range, it's portable, what more can you ask for?
So your computer is open and listening to that speaker.
And the owl. The owl is looking, it's going to like see how we design the speech on.
Right.
And then get to see. This is his owl. Rich also.
Yeah, I was going to say that owl looks different.
Yeah, because it's, first of all, it's not broken. And it's an upgrade. It's like a bit of an upgrade.
And I saw it was on a tripod, and I'm like, that's way too efficient for us.
Hello, Tom. Welcome.
Thank you, Rich.
Would you like a
Welcome.
glass of water? Cocktail, what would you like? No, I'll get you an agenda. Oh, are you, Lisa?
Feels like I'm right there with you, except you're sitting in a comfortable chair.
Yeah, Rich, you love these chairs, don't you?
And bring your own chair too, if you like.
These are all fun. I know, how fun is that? No, I don't.
Thank you.
Have a snack.
We have those. The real salty ones, yeah. Oh, yeah. Everybody sign it.
Let's just say PDF.
Yep, okay. That'd be good.
A lot. For much more than
I went to the eye doctor and my eyes are still dilated. What are you going to trick me into signing today? Since I can't read it.
He's very Steve would drive.
it was fun when I was in college. Now I'm like traffic center.
No, we actually have it so we'll only look at you.
That's my drink over under the weird to see where I am. So I'm plus minus, so we're gonna that's how we're running this year.
All right. I like it.
So I think I'm minus one already. By 1 hour.
Oh,
The hour over
a friend of
the
mine I hadn't seen in 5 years. And their kids, they have trouble. They just had their birthday. So I said, happy birthday. And it was that, you know, on your phone, you have a meme of you that looks like you. Where were you?
The whole country.
Yeah.
Well, around the coast. We
Did you go to Galway?
Maybe we can get the road's name.
I don't know, I had a pub on that, it was that road.
That's
like,
good. Yeah,
walk.
yeah. You know.
We went in, we went in a number of pubs there, and we had dinner at one that was excellent. Could have been. Name. There were several roads I drove on, that were just like that.
That's what
I thought I
supposed to
was
say one of these far from us as possible. because of
And I went to the Titanic, back to the road. So much of the museum was about how they actually built it, you know, in that time. 3 million bricks.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to call to order and welcome you to the Hampton-Wilbraham Regional School District School Committee meeting. It is 6:30 p.m. I see that David Sanders from Wilbraham Public Access Channel is recording. Is there anyone else here recording this meeting? Okay, we will do roll call in alphabetical order. Bill Bontempi. Cheryl Caruana. Here. Sean Kennedy.
Here.
Lisa Murray. Here. Rich Rediker.
Here.
Mike Terabasi. Here. And Michelle Boudreau. Here. If you would please stand, Mike will lead us in the pledge of allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We will begin with the Assistant Superintendent of Finance, Operations, and Human Resources, Aaron.
Sure. Sean, are you comfortable with me recapping what was talked about in the Budget and Finance submeeting?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
So you have in your packet a list of items that were on our original request, capital requests for Minnetonka for this past year. As you know, the school committee agreed with the towns to kick that down the road to the September-October timeline, at which point free cash would be certified and they could have a special town meeting to consider some of these items. In the interim, as you will recall, we've shared this, the boiler heat exchange for one of our boilers has failed. That's going to be a significant cost item. While we think we could limp along through this year on the remaining boilers, you know, there is the potential that if one of those, it's very unlikely, but if one of those were to go, we would have a lot of trouble. So we would like to do that sooner rather than later. As I also shared the wireless access points, this was an initial approach to try to spread the cost out and do it in a piecemeal manner. In talking to our vendor and working on some of the potential design engineers for putting this system together, it would be much more efficient and effective to do it all at once. So we would be kind of kicking that down the road at, next year to a larger amount, rolling up multiple years. So at the second piece you will see on this sheet is an updated capital request form for what those initial requests were. Sean and a few people did recall that when we were talking to the towns, there was an effort to try to prioritize a few meetings for what might end up going to town meeting. And I believe those were wireless access points and the AC splits that you see on there. So we would recommend, the subcommittee recommended breaking this into two items potentially for warrants consideration. So it would be the boiler heat exchange, which would be our top priority item, and the AC split items, which are student IEP matters often. And then into a second potential warrant item for the projectors and monitors and the camera upgrades. So if it were the will of the committee, you know, the committee could vote that. I could reach out to the towns and let them know that that's the will of the committee.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, any questions or discussion?
I'm just interested in what exactly are we getting with the camera systems updates again?
So the camera system in this building is original to the building. So many of the cameras are not high definition. There are actual locations that aren't serviced by cameras that we'd like to reach out to. So, you know, we'd just like to add some cameras and upgrade some of the cameras that are in the system. So the vast majority of the cameras in this system right now are 12, 13 years old.
Do they still work?
Yes, I mean, some, Steve.
Steve, do they work?
Well, the question would be, what do you want them to do? If
Right.
there's a hit and run at the four-way stop, do you want me to be able to zoom in and get the license plate of the car? Can't do that. I can tell you it was a blue car, it had 4 doors, and it could have been one of 8 different cars.
Okay.
When you're looking at a student situation in a hallway that might be 25, 30 yards away, I can tell you they had a green top on, blue jeans. That's, you know, so we're looking to actually be able to have cameras that zoom, especially outside. We get a lot of, you know, with new drivers, a lot of dings and those kinds of fender bender things that we would like to be able to help out families with, that it's really touch and go.
Thank you, that helps me.
How much are we voting on? What's the cost and what's the company? And
Yep.
is it,
So the ACs and the boilers would be, then the boiler heat exchange would come to 179,000 total. The cameras and the projectors and monitors are 129 combined.
129,000?
Yep.
And what company? I used to know it's security, because I've done a lot in some different buildings. Is there's new companies that are old-time security companies that are very expensive because they're not into the newest, latest, cheapest technology. I buy cameras, you know, that are consuming, they're high resolution, high definition, at $39 a pop, put them all over the place. But I'm just, again, I don't know, you know, anything about the system. I don't have enough details. I just know that some of the old legacy companies want to keep you going with some of their old legacy security equipment.
Right. I mean, given we're not replacing the entire system, which would be, you know, $700,000-800,000, we're really just looking to add cameras to an existing system where we are dealing with, you know, maybe a legacy system. Most school-based cameras that have the durability, indoor, outdoor, things like that, you know, aren't terribly cheap. It's hard to get. It's hard to do that on the cheap. We do have an obligation to go lowest bidder when we can. Most of our contractors, our vendors, are on state contract or on. We have a contract through MHEC, which is a consortium of buyers. So every item on here, we would have an obligation to either buy off a pre-bid contract or take the lowest of 3 bidders in some way, shape, or form.
Any other questions or concerns?
The boiler and heat exchange, is that addressing the cold water in the locker rooms?
No,
So that's been something that's come to my attention from a number of different people.
okay.
Basically, the showers in the locker rooms are cold and they don't get warm.
Okay. I can ask, the first I've heard of it, I can ask Mike or Dave. We had, this is the heat of the building, the heating of the building. And some of the locker rooms I'm not sure exactly how the boilers roll in with the hot water system. I'm not that tied into it. But the system has 5 boilers, right? When it went out, it was post-budget. And we realized we might not be able to get it done. And in talking to Mike and in talking to Dave, they felt like, you know, we could definitely work with 4 boilers this year if we had to.
What if we lose another one? What if you lose another one?
If we lose another one, then it's going to be touch and go. So that's why we've prioritized it now, right?
It makes sense.
Yeah. So very unlikely. I mean, they usually last, you know, 20 plus years. This one just went out of warranty. Yeah. So
same thing happened in the middle school.
Right. So, you know, we're trying to do the best we can with what we've got.
I mean, check the hot water. That would be interesting to know if that was tied in.
Yep. I will check with Mike and Dave on that.
Anyone else? Okay, we will do roll call vote. Bill, do you know the motion on the table?
Motion is to accept the capital request, I'm assuming.
Yes, however.
Submit them as 2 different warrants.
John, can you just put your right?
We're going to submit them, I was just going to, we're going to submit as 2 different warrants. We're going to have the AC splits and the boiler exchange under one, because that's what we told them we would do. Actually, it was going to be the wireless access points, but we switched it out for the boiler. And then the other 2, which we would still like to bring to the town, we're going to have on another warrant out of respect, saying like this is the second warrant that if they do have the money, you know, this is important to the school district, but we did promise them that we would go with, not only, but that we'd go with those 2. So we thought splitting it out would be a better way of presenting it to the town.
That's what we promised.
And to be clear, the second warrant would include the classroom projectors, monitors, and the camera system updates.
Yep.
Yeah. So Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa? Yes. Rich?
Yes.
Mike?
Yeah.
And myself, aye. The motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay, we will move on to old business. We will do the Booster Club update. John?
Thank you. As you'll recall, the last time we had Mr. DeCorzio here, we received information that he was resigning and that the board was resigning, which left some questions about the future of the committee. So earlier this week, Mrs. Boudreau and I met with Ron DeCorzio and Mike Flynn to discuss plans moving forward. At that time, they shared with us that it was their opinion and the opinion of the board that it was time for a change. And so they have decided to exercise the option under their bylaws of dissolving, in which case the funds that they have on account would revert to the athletic department. That's really what I have to share for updates. I guess I would just want to add that, you know, I know that over the course of the past 30 years, the athletic boosters have raised a tremendous amount of money for the athletic department. Number that is probably in several millions of dollars. And so I wanted to thank the boosters and those who are involved with that effort for all they've done on behalf of the district. Also, Mr. DeCorzio said that he was committed to helping with the transition. So if a new board is seated or a new iteration of this club is created, he would be happy to work on making sure that there was a smooth transition of power to new leadership. And finally, he wanted the committee to know that Turf at CHOG is a separate organization, and those who are involved in the Turf at CHOG effort, which in many cases are many of the same people from the boosters, they want to remain engaged with that to get some final things done with the athletic field, particularly new scoreboard and new entranceway.
So I just have a couple of questions. I've been in touch with Ron kind of on and off since the last meeting. He had requested that I be there for the meeting. Is there a reason why I wasn't included in the invitation? He had sent emails, I believe, on the 6th that I'm
We were just looking to figure out the next steps for the Booster Club and how they were able to move forward, and they were welcome to come to our full school committee meeting. So they were already here, they provided, we have the copies of the bylaws. There was no reason, there was nothing that was being hid from anyone.
I think out of respect, I think it speaks to a larger issue that, you have a person who's coming to meet with the school committee, especially given the years of service that Mr. Flynn and Mr. Curzio have given the district. If there is a request, I would honestly expect it to be honored. I'm not sure why I was admitted. Ron asked me the same thing. He said, did you get an invite to a meeting? I said, no. I said, nobody ever contacted me. He said, I asked that you be there. I'm not sure why I was omitted from it. The second thing is that I did have an opportunity to talk to him and to several other members of the committee about the boosters. And I think that the school committee needs to take a step forward on this. And I know that there are still some outstanding things in investigation, but I do not want to chew up the same dirt that we did 30 years ago. And dissolving the booster club is the wrong way to go. We talk about equity in this district all the time. If you want to talk about inequity, you put the fundraising, 85 football players against 7 cross-country members, and you will see inequity personified. And that's why the booster club that's why it was designed. So I think that as a school committee, and John, I thank you for your comments because they really are relevant. And this is work that is done largely behind the scenes. These people receive no fanfare, they don't receive any commendations. They do a ton of work. You look at the stuff that they've done through the years to provide for the high school, it's incalculable. And I think that it's a shame that it got this far. And I think that it's even worse that we as a committee have not taken a stance to defend the people on that board who have worked so hard for so many years to provide for so many students. I'm mortified by it. And quite frankly, I can appreciate their complete separation from the organization with the way that they've been treated, the accusations that have been leveled against them, and quite honestly, the lack of respect and the lack of recognition that they've gotten from this body, in my opinion. So I think it is incumbent upon us to do what we can to make sure that the booster club not only survives, but moving forward thrives and does what it is that it was set out to do, and that is to provide equity for all sports across the district.
I don't remember anyone saying that they wanted to dissolve the boosters, so I'm not sure where that's coming from.
John just said it. But I don't believe it's to eliminate the booster club. It's because, according to their bylaws, they need a seated board, so they recommended dissolving and then having a new board,
But they're going to need obviously they're going to need some direction. And I don't know who else you're going to have to do it. So I think that, I think this is one of those things. We spent a lot of time over the last 7 years, ranging into territory that is clearly not our responsibility. And I think that this is one of those situations where we are responsible for the district at a 35,000 foot level. And this is one of those organizations that provides a ton of support, doesn't demand a lot, and I think it's imperative that we stay engaged and that we work very closely to make sure that the transition is smooth, to make sure that we're supportive, and to make sure that moving forward, we have a clear definition of what we are going to do serving as an intermediary, because I don't think there's anybody else that should be in that role. I don't think you can put an athletic director in that role. I don't think it's appropriate. I don't think the principal is appropriate either. And so when the organization was first formed, it was formed and approved by the school committee. And I think they laid out the case very clearly, and it may not have followed through the way that we would have anticipated that it would have. However, at the end of the day, what we have is an organization that's been incredibly generous and incredibly productive for this district. I think it would be the effect. But we have to be there to provide the support and to provide the guidance.
I have a question. Thank you. The fund that will resort to the athletic department, do we have a number on that?
I think it's approximately $200,000.
So, after reading their bylaws, is there no opportunity for a new board to become seated? Do they see dissolution as the only way forward? I mean, they have a number of members. Is it possible for them to reach out to their members to see if there are people who are interested in being evaluated to be on the board?
So,
I mean, this is their own process. We don't have any control over it. We can't tell them what to do, but...
So in my opinion, I don't think dissolution is inevitable or the only option available. Under the bylaws, the existing board could pick new members to replace them. It's been represented to me that the existing members are basically just ready for a change and don't want to take that second process.
John, when you were suggesting transferring the funds over, you're not saying don't have a booster anymore. I was under the impression that the organization as it stands, because the board, has dissolved, that we would take over the funds, but then I thought that we would want to have the boosters always. Is that something that is not under consideration?
It's not something that is not under consideration. I think that, as I said, the boosters have been vital to the athletic program, and I honestly don't see how you have a high-quality program continue without some kind of a booster organization. The only reason that money would revert to the athletic department is because if the chain of succession is broken and the current board does not appoint a successor board, then there's no way for the group to function.
Aaron, how does that work in terms of accounting? Do you have to, because it would be considered a gift.
Yeah, so it would need to be in the form of a gift. The school committee would then have to accept that gift.
How would you move forward with that? I'm just thinking in terms of keeping the structure of the booster club alive.
Yeah. I think the school committee could direct those funds to go into the athletic revolving account, and that would be used to support the athletic program. We could talk about ways that it could do that. The real challenge is we don't have an avenue for doing the kind of fundraising that the Booster Club does. We cannot. So we can't hold, parent money. We can't hold that money for those purposes. And then, we don't want, Sally the soccer mom to take $15,000 in donations from people, right, and put them in her own bank account. So that's a really awkward situation from an accountability, a liability, and then a potential tax base. And many people who give donations, particularly significant donations, are expecting for that to be tax deductible. So you want an organization that has a 501c3 and maintains their 501c3 status.
Right. Now, if you take that money and you put it into the athletic revolving account, that revolving account pays for considerable things beyond what the boosters was originated for. Booster clubs originated to keep users' fees low. It wasn't used to pay officials and things like that. So,
correct. It would change the status of that money.
Well, and it becomes an issue again with equity, right? Because you're now taking money that was originally set aside and appropriated to lower users' fees, and now we're taking it and we're saying, well, we're going to use it for officials. Right. And I can tell you that you have a large variability in officials depending on what sport you play and how many officials.
Yeah, I can't speak to exactly how that will end up.
So if they go ahead and they choose to not appoint or choose successors, then let's call it the old booster club would dissolve, and those funds would go to the athletic department. It seems pretty universal, I think, across here that everyone sees that there really has to be a booster club, and it would not be tolerable for there not to be. So that would then
logically, that there would then be a creation of a new booster club. And when those funds are turned over to the athletic department, would it be possible for them to be just safeguarded? And when the new booster club is formed, those funds to be returned as kind of the seed money? Because those funds came from fundraisers from the parents.
That's the,
for that.
yeah, that's when the IRS comes in and.
Yeah, I mean, I'd want to talk to our auditor, I'd want to talk to the state, I'd want to talk to our attorney about that.
That was one of the reasons why I was hoping to be present when that meeting was held, so that I could implore Mike and implore Ron to, you know, to do what we could to try to keep this, because this will become a mess, right? If we accept all of those funds as a donation to the athletic department, and then you try to reform the boosters, I think you're going to face a really, really steep uphill battle.
Can you explain more about what this meeting is? Because I don't know anything about this meeting. You said it was on the 6th and the 11th? Or?
No, I don't know when the meeting was. Ron had talked to me. I had run into him when I was walking the dogs, and he asked me if I received an invite to a meeting. He said they're trying to set up a meeting. I said, great. Would you be willing to be there? I said, absolutely. Because I've been around a while, and he said, that would definitely help because you definitely understand what it is that we're trying to achieve. And then I talked to him on the phone, and he asked me again. He said, we're trying to set up a meeting. He said, did you receive any invitation? I said, no. And they said, well, I emailed them, and I told them that, I asked if we could be there. And then I said I hadn't gotten anything, and then I just talked to him earlier this morning, and he said, we already had the meeting. He said, I noticed that you weren't there. I said, no. I said, did you ever get an invite? I said, no. So.
What was discussed at this meeting, or was it, because the last I talked to Ron, he said that they were willing to do something to get a new board in and such like that. That's the last I heard. Has that changed?
So I can share at that meeting, he represented, and that was basically the question on the table. The question was, since he had submitted his resignation and he had indicated verbally that the rest of the board was also resigning, my question was, is that still the status, or would there be some way of them continuing the process under their bylaws of seating another group to take over for them? The representation I heard was that based on all that's happened, those who are currently involved with the Booster Club are no longer interested in continuing.
Did we ask the question, what would we be able to do in terms of support to be able to have them continue the organization the way that it currently is and have them work to seat a new board?
I don't think that I asked that question directly. He did ask for some support from the district and things that could be done for the transition. Specifically, he asked if we could do recommendations of auditors, because one of the things he wanted to do was have an audit conducted, so we did say we could support with that. But I don't recall that being part of the conversation.
When we did ask if they would remain, even if we needed one of them to remain on to appoint the next board, and during that conversation, that was the point of the meeting, during that conversation, he was unwilling to do so, and he also stated that there was no one else that was willing to do that either, and that they felt it was time for a new board to come on and take over. But it was certainly, well, he said that he was willing to help with the transition, and he was willing to be, to be as much help as he could be.
But the help we need from him is to appoint at least one new member, right? And
Right.
That he's not willing to.
Correct. He, as you all know, you were all here, he did submit his letter of resignation publicly at our school committee meeting. And, previously, he had stated that everybody else had submitted their resignation as well.
Can I just ask a question? When Ron came in before we found out about the issue with the hockey parents, he came in to give us kind of a state of the state of of that. Do we know what date that meeting was, that we had that State of the State meeting?
Can you state of the state? I'm not.
Remember, he was sitting over there and he passed out that the brochure and was talking about it, like, what was that date?
We could easily get that from the agenda. My recollection was it was sometime in late spring.
I was gonna say April.
Yeah.
I thought, are you sure? Because I thought it was May, right before the elections, like the 10th of the, or the 11th or the 12th or something like that.
Might have been later in April, but what's the question?
No, I just want to know, because I want to know if that meeting happened before or after he resigned. Because I thought that, he said he resigned on May 11th, and I thought we had that meeting on May 12th. And he didn't say anything about that. When was it?
April 27th.
April 27th? Okay, so I'm mistaken.
So, with the board's permission, I'd like to be able to reach out to him and have good conversations to see if we can alter the trajectory of this.
Second.
Any questions? Well, it sounds like everyone's been reaching out to him and having conversations with him anyway, so.
No, that was at the meeting that we had. And he was like, no, we'll make it work. And I was like,
I mean, I feel especially bad just simply because, you know, this is my 9th year, and he's been here probably 7 out of the 9 years, and I've known him, I knew him well before I was on the board, and, you know, the discussions that we had were always that the Booster Club answered to the school committee. There's never any ambiguousness about that. And I find it odd that, you know, with this Booster Club has been running for really 30 years, 30 plus years, and we have a hiccup. And now all of a sudden we're like, oh, no, we're not actually responsible for it. And when that question was raised, it should have been raised, you know, whenever you come to the meeting and say you guys are responsible for oversight. So it was never something that was ever investigated by the school committee, but I think that now there's an issue that's come up and we've reached a boiling point. I wish it didn't get to this point. I wish we had addressed this back when these issues first arose, because I think we might have avoided a lot of the angst. And I mean, I know in Mike and Ron's eyes, you know, the accusations that were leveled against them about money that was being taken and, you know, the potential for embezzlement. Who wants to deal with that? I mean, who wants to be in an organization where people are leveling those types of accusations? Not I, not Ron, not Mike, certainly not the other members. So the horse is already out of the barn. The question is if we're willing to do the work to run it down. So I'd like the opportunity to sit down with him, talk to him, get a little bit more information before we start talking about dissolving, transferring. Resignations can be rescinded. We can work with them, try to get a new group of people together who are willing to put the work in. But I think going forward, the most important thing is that if we are going to ask Ron or any member of the board to do that, that we need to make it crystal clear that we will have it back. Because I don't think anybody is, you know, lining up to be a member of the Booster Club board, seeing what's transpired in the last 3 months.
I would say, if this is okay with everyone, that we will be meeting with council about this at a point in the future, and then, you know, we can decide all these things on how we approach it at that meeting, rather than having you go and talk to them. We just need to be careful of the legal aspects of it.
Such as?
Did you read the email?
I did.
Okay.
I did. So I don't think there was anything in there
That mentioned conversations with members of the board.
I don't remember anything in the conversations that said we had oversight of the boosters.
He said it every single year. Every
No,
single
but I
year.
mean, in the paperwork I read.
It's not
I
in there,
never,
it's not in
ever saw
there.
that.
Yeah, it shows correct, it's not in there,
That's the problem.
bylaws, yeah.
I don't think we're in a position right now to discuss whether or not we have oversight over the booster. But I don't think that there's anything wrong with any member of the committee or any member of the community, for that matter, reaching out to the resigning board of the Booster Club if there was a way to encourage them to appoint members for the sake of, preserving the club that exists and not having to have the club start from scratch again. I would be in favor of that. I don't know either of these guys, and they sound like wonderful guys, and they've worked really hard, and they certainly, among, they really do deserve the community thanks and the school's thanks and the community's thanks, but they also, should have the right to be able to say, I put in a lot of work, it's my time to step down, I want to step, I completely respect that. But, if anyone was able to, that who knows them well, to persuade them to appoint a board before stepping away, that would really, I think, be a positive thing for the school district.
I think with everybody sitting here, there's consensus that the Booster Club has to continue. I think that's, I don't think there's anybody at this table that disagrees with that.
There's no doubt about that.
Right now, it looks like it will dissolve, and the funds will go to the athletic department, and then a new club will be formed, starting with an account at zero, and they'll start fundraising. And
So I'd like it not to get to that point. The question is that, it sounds great in theory, right? But again, I ask the question, who's going to be volunteering for that, right? Without at least the school committee acknowledging that they will have the backs of the people that are going to be volunteering for that position.
And I think that's where the attorney comes in, that we'll have we will come up with this is our role in this in the future, but I think it's at the point where it is now that we have to take legal counsel.
I agree with Sean. We're not in a position to discuss that particular aspect of it.
No. Only thing that I asked was just to reach out to him and to Mike and to try to do a little bit further.
To see if they will rescind their resignation and appoint a new board?
Yes. Good with that?
Or anyone in the community doing that, including you.
Thanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. We will move on to the student handbook with Lisa Curtin, Director of Curriculum, Instruction, and Professional Learning.
Good evening, thank you very much. Before I get started reviewing the changes to the 2023-2024 student handbook, I just want to thank everyone that reviewed the handbook and provided updates. It is quite a daunting process every year. Thank you to Andrea Noonan for creating the revision document for this meeting with all the colors that I know you really like. As the superintendent's update to you prior to the meeting stated, the most significant changes to the student handbook are the sexual harassment Title IX policy and the sections on hazing and student discipline, and these are all complete revisions. The federal government issued new Title IX regulations, and our district revised its policy accordingly. The handbook changes align with key components of the new regulations and policy. New Title IX regulations are expected this year, maybe October or November, so we may need to substantially revise the section again next year. The hazing section is updated to align with state law and our policy, both of which identify hazing as a crime punishable by fine and/or imprisonment. The discipline section is completely updated to comply with the changes to the school discipline law, with the changes to the school discipline law, which were included as a rider to the FY23 state budget and have been discussed with the committee at previous meetings. These three sections will now be found in the general section of the handbook, so instead of repeating them over and over again throughout the elementary, middle school, and high school sections, we'll consolidate them just to the beginning part of the, to the handbook. Also, there's an introduction to the sexual harassment Title IX policy in the general section of the handbook, and then a link to the full document that will be in Appendix A, in the back of the handbook, so that people have access to the entire document. The rest of the changes were pretty basic. The change to visitor access, this is updated to reflect that an ID is required for entry into school buildings in the district. Prior to that, it did not say it was required. The information about TECA, the Commonwealth Virtual Academy, is underneath the homeschooling information in our handbook, but it is technically not homeschooling. So we have deleted that information. Under laptop lab and Chromebook cart usage, in reading that carefully, it's information that really doesn't belong in a student handbook, and that has been deleted. It's more for employees and staff. The bullying prevention and intervention plan has been updated per DESI requirements. It's been reviewed, and only minor revisions were made to update the district contact list and list of professional development topics for staff that are provided through GCN, or Global Compliance Network. So the bullying prevention and intervention plan will be linked in the handbook, in the student handbook. It will also be posted on our website. A little update on the one-to-one device information. Language was added to that to clarify the AUP, RUA, and device lending agreements need to only be completed once during a student's school career. We had a concerted effort last year at every building to send out all of those documents for families to review, sign, and send in, and our administrative assistants were able to create a field in Admin Plus, so we have that information and we have the documents on file. Only students new to the district or students or families that did not complete it last year will have to do that, so much easier to manage. Underneath graduation participation in ceremonies, the graduation fee increased from $80 to $85. And there was a student activities participation fee increase from $40 per year to $45. There was also a half-year option added at $22.50. And every year we do have changes in high school student activities and clubs. There were several clubs and activities that were added, including Military Community Club, Spanish Club, Active Minds Mental Health Club, Table Tennis Tournament, Students of Color Alliance, World Care Club, and Yoga Club. There were a few changes to some clubs. The Art Club has transformed into the Art and Clay Club. Chess Team has changed to be the Chess Club, and Honor Guard has been changed to just Color Guard. And then there were a few clubs or activities that were removed due to lack of student interest. The Celebrate Life Club, One Act Play was removed, and Pep Band was removed. Robotics was removed because it's run outside of our student activities. It's not a high school club. So it doesn't mean that it's not happening, it's just not a school-based club. And the computer club is to be determined. They just need an advisor, so they're waiting on that so the club can run. And that is all the revisions that we have. Thank you.
I have a couple of questions. One
Sure.
is the robotics club. That's very popular at the middle school. With the 8th graders coming, or 7th graders coming up, if we do go with an 8th grade class here, would that be available to them?
It's something that's provided, they sign up for. It's outside of what the high school manages, and so I'm sure if there is a robotics club in our towns, that students will be able to sign up for it.
Okay, thank you. Sure. And the other question is, there were a lot of policies that have been updated. Will we need to put those in our policy book via MASC?
That is a really good question. I think we may have to go back and look at some of them to make sure that they do match. And I think the superintendent and I have done a little bit of that, but that might be something that we should go to policy committee.
Okay, thank you.
If I can speak very quickly to robotics, I help with their signups, and they did sign up for a middle school program this year.
Yeah, they usually really enjoy it.
Yep, so it should still be at the middle school.
Anyone else, any questions?
I had one point on the handbook, not that it might be our language or their language, but I was reading the Title IX delineates three distinct categories of behavior that qualify as sexual harassment. And I read that sentence over and over again, the one that was in there, an employee of the recipient conditioning. And those words just didn't make any sense to me. The employee of the recipient conditioning go with recipient, conditioning go with employee. So I put it into ChatGPT, and it made it a whole lot clearer going with the others. Again, I don't know if it's our word or nothing else, but basically, anyone who has a condition of any benefit of services based on individual causes, not welcome sexual action. It's just the way it is written, it doesn't make sense reading it around the time. But again, if it ever, I don't know who reads the small print, I agree with what it says, it's not clear enough to an average person like me, until I read it 20 times.
I'm sorry, I was not able to know exactly what you were speaking of because we were trying to get the volume up in here. I do know that sometimes that legalese language is really tricky, so I don't know if you heard what Rich was talking about.
I did. I think these definitions come directly from the Title IX regulations, so I wouldn't recommend changing them. But I do agree that oftentimes regulators don't put their language in, sort of plain English.
Agreed and understood.
Anyone else? May I have a motion?
Make a motion to accept the student handbook provisions.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, we'll do roll call. Bill?
Yes.
Cheryl?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Lisa?
Yes.
Rich?
Yep.
Mike?
Yep.
Myself, aye. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you very much, Lisa.
Thank you, everyone.
We will move on. It's now time for public comment. Do we have a microphone? Okay, so we will call on those who have signed up or are interested in making public comment. We do ask that when called that each person say their name and their affiliation with the district. Sit at the designated spot. Make sure the green light on the microphone is on, and you can speak for up to 2 minutes. Is there anyone else? Is there anyone here that is interested in making public comment? Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry.
So I'll have the timer right here, so you can see.
I got it. Thank you, Sean.
Awesome.
Diane Deal, 6 Drumlin Circle, Wilbraham. Just to address some of the concerns with the boosters, it would be great if Ron or Mike could unresign for a day a week. I am willing, and there are others in the community that are willing to step up and work on the transition and create a board and move forward and begin to rewrite the bylaws and also to start fundraising. There are people in the community that are willing to step up. We need a booster club. There's no denial that we need a booster club, and there are many in the community that are willing to do that. And I do agree with many of the sentiments that, the boosters over the years have done a lot for the community, but as of late, the communication and transparency have just not been there, and that's fundamentally what we're looking for, and there are parents that are willing to be involved.
Thank you.
Steve Hale, 59 East Long Meadow Road. A couple of considerations that need to be considered in this booster club situation. One, football starts tomorrow. All other sports start on Monday. Right now, we've instructed the teams not to fundraise because we have no method of collecting those funds or monitoring those funds or anything. Secondly, if the money were returned to the athletic department and all club spirit groups were $0, we would now be faced with a situation where all 31 teams would want to fundraise at a feverish level to try and get their accounts back up to what they were, which would be an oversaturation in our two communities of fundraising between class fundraisers and club fundraisers and the Watt organization, the Minichog Music Association, and all of the sports teams trying to simultaneously fundraise. So there is a lot of implications for Steve and I to manage, and I know that time is of the essence because, again, football starts tomorrow.
Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Okay, thank you very much. We will continue with the subcommittee updates. Curriculum subcommittee, I do not believe has met.
No.
Planning subcommittee, we are having our next meeting on Tuesday, September 12th at 5:30 in the district conference room. Finance and operations committee, Sean.
We just had a meeting today, and John kind of reviewed what we talked about. We haven't decided on the next meeting yet, but I think we're okay with all the motions that we needed, right? So we're good. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're, the LPVEC collaborative representative, Lisa? Okay. Okay. The LPVEC corporation representative, Sharon?
I spoke with the assistant because I think the last person resigned and we've got a new person in place. She's looking at probably 3 meetings a year for the financial meetings, and she told me that one of the changes that are in the works are the electric cars, electric buses for some of the routes. So they'll be looking to redo the routes because you can only go so many feet in elevation and have the car work. So that's my report.
Great investment.
Okay. Thank you. And negotiations, there's been nothing. Policy subcommittee, have you met? Okay. And technology subcommittee? Okay, great. So we will move on to consent agenda. Secretary report, approval of minutes.
I make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Second.
I do have a quick note on here. This is just bureaucracy, but Lisa Murray is the secretary, and I'm the vice chair.
Anyone else? Okay. Roll call vote. Bill?
Yes.
Sharon? Aye. Sean?
Aye.
Lisa?
Aye.
Rich?
Aye.
Mike?
Yes.
And myself, aye. Motion carries 7-0. Thank you. Superintendent's update.
Thank you. Let me begin by updating the committee on our ongoing efforts to improve our emergency preparedness. Borrowing from the Partners for Alliance for Safer Schools, I'd like to make a distinction between drills and exercises. Drills are educational opportunities to practice procedures without an element of realism. For example, we don't pump smoke through the HVAC system to conduct a fire drill. Exercises, on the other hand, are much more intense. They attempt to replicate real-life scenarios to stress test our people and our systems for coordinating with first responders in emergency situations. I think it's important for the public to know that we do not subject our students to realistic exercises. And I think it's also important for the public to know that we do subject ourselves to them. Yesterday, the Hamden and Wilbraham Police Departments assisted us with 3 types of active intruder drills that gave us a chance to train together with our first responders. A large number of school personnel from all the schools turned out to practice these simulations. I was impressed and thankful that so many staff took time out of their quickly dwindling summer vacations to make our schools safer. I'd also like to thank Aaron Osborne, Chief Trombley, and Chief Lennon for all the time they put into designing 3 very realistic and plausible scenarios for us to practice yesterday. And then moving on to the Planning Committee update. I conducted my summer series of community conversations about possible district reorganization this Tuesday. Over the course of the 6 sessions held this summer, I was able to hear from more than 50 individuals representing various stakeholder groups. I'd like to thank Aaron Dowding for keeping detailed notes of the sessions, which allowed me to summarize the themes that came up, which is what I'll do now. By far, the strongest theme was the desire for more information about how 8th grade would function if it were brought to the high school. This included requests to see sample class schedules and staffing patterns. A sub-theme was a wish to know whether the teaming model would remain, and given that all that's been said about our community's investment in the middle school model, I've been operating under the assumption that we would want to maintain that. We will clarify that in future communications. Parents in particular wanted to know more about what opportunities 8th graders would have to participate in MIAA athletics and higher level classes. Next, in order of frequency, were questions about the process of amending the regional agreement and appreciations for the transparency of communication and opportunities to engage in two-way dialogue about the options the district is considering. Those 2 themes came up in every meeting. Concerns about having 8th graders in the same school and buses as 12th graders were the next most common theme. This came up mainly for parents who were concerned that their students might be exposed to some mature adolescent behavior before they were ready for it. Several people also expressed a desire for more information about the short and long-term costs and/or cost avoidance associated with the models under consideration. We'll start to fill in some of those details at the next planning meeting. A similar number of people wanted to know how a reorganization would advance the educational mission of the district and contribute to higher student achievement. Issues concerning trust and potential loss of identity also came up in several sessions. While I think there's widespread agreement that the current status of the 6th through 8th grade at Green Meadows is not educationally sound, some people feel the crisis was engineered by the district and that the consolidation of public services between the 2 towns threatens the unique identity of Hamden. These first 6 themes came across most strongly. I think of them as the overall takeaways from the sessions because they came up at multiple sessions or among multiple people. The next set of issues I'll talk about are things that maybe were not so prominent. They were things that may have been expressed by only 1 or 2 people, but I want to mention them anyways because they may be representative of some other thoughts in the community. A family from Wilbraham shared that moving the preschool to Green Meadows would be hard for them because it would mean a lot of back and forth driving for half-day sessions. However, they said the preschool, if it were made into a full day as part of the move to Green Meadows, would be highly desirable. And I'd like to discuss this more with the Planning Committee because the equity audit in our own analysis has shown that one of the greatest achievement gaps we have in the district occurs between low-income and non-low-income families, and we know that full-day pre-K is one of the strongest interventions we can provide to reduce those gaps. I also heard that it would be helpful in future communications to lay out the rationale for a potential change. There was some confusion about whether this was an attempt to save money, enhance education for students, address overcrowding, or to pursue multiple goals at once. I also heard that I think there's an understanding that it's a matter of trade-offs and that there are pros and cons to each option, and even an acknowledgement that there will be unintended consequences that we can't be aware of, but wanting to know at least sort of how we would handicap the different options and what we see as the pluses and minuses associated with each. There was also a request for the Planning Committee to take a look to see if overcrowding at the middle school could be resolved by moving the 6th grade from both towns to Green Meadows rather than moving the 8th grade to the high school. Finally, there was a question about whether the Planning Committee was correct in its assumption at the beginning that there was no appetite for additional building projects in Wilbraham, and maybe we should investigate that process. So those were the things that came up in my summer conversations. I think it gives us a lot of direction for how we want to move forward with future communications, as well as what topics the planning committee would want to investigate more fully before bringing forward recommendations to the school committee. And that's my report.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John.
No questions? Okay. So future agenda items, we have what to be valued, what is going to be done. Is there anything else that you'd like to add?
I know that we had talked about, updating the Zoom so it works better. So people who are on Zoom right now, could you send us an email if this is better today than it has been in the past?
We don't use Zoom for the public. We stream on YouTube.
YouTube.
Okay.
Sorry, if people on YouTube right now, if this works well, could just let us know.
And Aaron, just as a tickler for next meeting, if we can just investigate the cold water situation.
Yeah, I have a note to talk to Dave and Mike about it. It's the first I've heard of it.
Yeah, I know, because my oldest does diving.
Okay.
And she usually comes home smelling like chlorine.
Okay. Fair enough. We'll look at that.
I have something too. Those people on the policy committee and well, first of all, the policy committee will need to send me, I'm not saying I'm the chair, I just need to get together the policy committee people and the curriculum committee people in separate meetings so that we can identify who's the leader of the committee and start to look at what kinds of things we need to do, because looking at the, today I spent quite a bit of time looking at the new policies, and unfortunately, Maura's not here, and she had really kept us up to date, and we're behind already. So policy and curriculum need to get going. So send me emails as to what would be a good time, and I'll try and make it happen.
Thank you. We do the need for executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, C, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, 3, to discuss strategy with respect to litigations, including Kevin Edward Landers individually and on behalf of all of their persons similarly situated. First, Hamden Wilbraham Regional School District, Hamden County Superior Court, case number 237-9CV00338 et al. If an open meeting may have a detrimental effect on the litigating position of the public body, and the chair so declares.
So moved.
Second.
Okay.
Yes.
We will be adjourning from executive session. Okay, Cheryl. Sean.
Aye.
Lisa. Aye. Rich.
Aye.
Mike.
Yes.
Myself, aye. So we are adjourned from regular session and moving to executive session. Thank you.
We're staying right here.